And I remember Zoe just grabbed me by the shoulders and she's from Chinatown and she's got this intense kind of like New York accent. She's just like, "You're Asian and that's beautiful."
And welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Arnell Radford. And yes, I'm still here in this red box. I can't seem to get out of here. But like I said before, I can always invite guests in. They can get out. I just can't get out. But we are here in the virtual studio. Today, we are taking a trip to Theater Horizon to talk about a world premiere musical called Wishing to Grow Up Brightly, a search for connection in the fragments left behind. And I am here with one of the creators and an awesome theater artist, Amanda Morton. Amanda,
Hi.
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
I know I've known you for so long. I can't believe I haven't had a chat with you. I think it's because you're just so wonderfully busy.
We're all busy. And
Yes.
I feel like I've been bopping around states between Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. And so whenever I can find little nooks and crannies to share space with people I love and I'm a fan of, it's really just a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we'll catch the people up. I'm sure some of our listeners like, "Oh my God, Amanda Morton." But for the ones who may be new to you, tell us about yourself and tell us some of the things you've been up to recently.
Sure. So I have primarily been a music director. I work mostly on developing new works, original musicals. Most recently, I was the associate conductor and second keyboardist for Operation Mincemeat on Broadway. So that was really fun. And I love those writers. Just plug for them. They're incredible. But then I got hired at my alma mater, Ithaca College, where I attended as a BFA musical theater performer. And I've begun work there as an assistant professor of music direction for this new generation of performers, which I really love. But simultaneously to that, I've been developing this musical, Wishing to Grow Up Brightly, by way of the generous Pew Grant I received. And I'm also the music supervisor on a new adaptation of Anne of Green Gables and the music director for a musical adaptation of Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh my God. So you haven't been doing much at all, right?
We're just juggling. On top of it, I have this amazing 5-year-old daughter named Parker G. Totora. I must say her name because she is my North Star.
Wonderful. Yeah, so exciting. The reason I love asking all of those things is because it's always, people who are starting out and trying to figure out where to go, they always get overwhelmed by like everything they want to do. They want to get married, they want to have children, they want to get a house, but they also want to be authentically creators. And don't always think all of those things can happen. And so by listing all of those things and talk about how you're juggling all of that.
Well, I will say that's such a great thing that you bring up because it's been a long crescendo. I spent many, many days being the receptionist at a hair salon in the East Village of New York City and a waiter and a cashier and a data entry person. And I've worked at many jobs building up steam and building trust. And Philadelphia played a very crucial role in my development as a music director and educator because I met Matt Decker through Theater Horizon when I performed in the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee and just engaged with all these amazing artists like Jenny Eisenhower, Jill Camp, and Carl Clemens Hopkins and Mike Doherty. And they were all at the beginning of their journey in Philadelphia. So hearing them speak so passionately about this place really drew me in and encouraged me to understand that going to other cities and really listening to the kind of pursuit you have deep in your belly is worth chasing after. It doesn't always have to be in New York City. I certainly enjoy my time there, but coming to Philly changed my life fundamentally. And it helped me understand that I could pursue all those interests, being an educator, being a music director, meeting just friends and community to just hang with and developing relationships. And so it doesn't all have to happen at once. I kind of think of it as a mixing board, a soundboard when you go into a recording studio and you see all those sliders that the sound mixer is working on, and they slide, some get louder volume and then come down. And that's my metaphor for this, being in the arts, especially as someone, I've needed to always work. I always need to have a job of some sort. So add in that really challenging and important friction into your life, then you're talking about balancing a certain financial situation on top of pursuing the arts. So I would just say plant seeds and let that garden grow and be patient and keep
Get in that
watering.
get in that booth and adjust the levels.
Yeah,
Life is about
exactly.
adjusting levels.
It is. And sometimes it's got to be louder for your friends and community so that you have the sanity to continue on in the arts.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is amazing the way this community responds to, especially somebody who's new to the area or just like trying to figure out their space in the community. It seems like you've been like, oh, you're new? Let me connect you to like, here's the echelon of people. Like, you usually have direct access to somebody who's like, what? Really? Because there's so much great talent here. And it does feel like we are not in competition with each other. We're in celebration of each other.
I agree
Yeah.
completely because there are so many disciplines and genres and modes of art making in Philadelphia. And also blending. I've been so grateful for the times that companies like Lightning Rod Special or the Bearded Ladies have engaged me and said, well, I know you do this, but do you think you could apply that over here? And I'm just really grateful for being seen in a dimensional way versus being put in a corner, which can be a situation that arises in a commercial space, for example. And I'm not saying it doesn't mean that people don't have multi interests or don't do many different things, but I think that Philadelphia is an incredibly generous city. You really articulated that so beautifully.
Well, it was based on what you said, and I just cleaned it up a little bit. We'll both take credit for that.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about your latest work, this world premiere musical, Wishing to Grow Up Brightly, which you've created in collaboration with Matt Decker and Bren Thompson.
Yeah. And also Josh Totora,
And
my
music by
husband, who's
Josh
the
Totora. Yes, we love Josh too.
composer, orchestrator, co-leader.
It is a family affair here.
It really is. Is, you know, Matt and Bren are people whose work I just adore. Their voices are so clear. They're incredible storytellers. And Josh, too, even, I think sometimes people relegate music to a certain area, but that is storytelling. And having been a music director and worked on so many new works, it was important for me, too, that Josh was invited into those sessions where we were storyboarding. And in many ways, because we're all coming from different disciplined backgrounds and experiences, the three of them asked me incredible questions. Like the first workshop we did was about a week-long interview where they said, well, we need to get everything that's in your head on the outside. And what was interesting is there were even things that hadn't come up for Josh and me as husband and wife, like that, not for lack of a desire, just time, raising a child, a pandemic, careers, making a living. And so that was really interesting. And then even Matt is someone I know really well, and Bren, there were things that we hadn't gotten into as friends that was surprising to them. And but I felt incredibly safe and invited to reveal that soft underbelly of my history.
So let's get into it. Let's talk about this piece. In general, tell our listeners what the piece is about, and then let's talk about the origins.
Yeah, so it's loosely based on my adoption story as a Korean American who came here when I was 5.5 months old. And we experience it through the lens of grief. So it ends up being an investigation of trying to find a lost history of Korean heritage, but we're experiencing it through the scenario where Amanda, the character, is coming home to help my mother pack up the childhood home after the death of my father. And so we are walking into a very universal task, but through the unearthing of memories and packing and encountering things from childhood, the character of myself starts having realizations about areas that were suppressed and overlooked in the name of fitting in or just kind of living out a childhood. And so what becomes apparent is that there is a part of myself that happened in the first 5 months of my life that is a mystery. And so we end up going on a journey of essentially finding out what that means, what it means to be Korean when you haven't really encountered that, faced yourself in that way. Even though I look in the mirror and I see this person, there's a lot that I don't know that people may presume I know.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a common position that comes from stereotypes and just assumptions that are made. How did upon growing up, when did you start to feel the need to kind of tap more into your, where you were born and what you came, the makeup of you that you didn't quite know?
I think the first time I was confronted with my Asianness, as silly as that sounds, was in my late 20s. And I had engaged with an organization called the National Asian Artist Project, founded by Berkeley, Stephen Ang, and Nina Zoe Lam. And I had done a New Works festival, so to speak. And it was the first time I was enveloped by community. I hadn't really engaged with the API community in New York City up until that point. And I really felt things firing off in my brain that I had never felt before. And similar to Philly, I just found myself having access to all these heroes of mine, like Berkeley and Jose Lana, and people, Lori Tanchin, Kamiko Glenn, Hansel Tan, who was in Young Americans here. We were in that piece together. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand. I feel pride. I look at myself and maybe I think I'm a beautiful person. And I remember Zoe just grabbed me by the shoulders and she's from Chinatown and she's got this intense kind of like New York accent. She's just like, you're Asian and that's beautiful. And just having an older generation Asian woman look me in the eyes and just slap me with that reality, asking me, demanding that I accept myself it was overwhelming. It brought up a lot. It wasn't easy. It didn't all click in, but I can see where that was in Hell's Kitchen. I can see the restaurant we were at. I see where I am at the bar with her. And it's so visceral. But it wasn't really until I was pregnant with my daughter that I came face to face with the fact that I'm going to have to tell her something about being Korean, that we are Korean, that she's going to be multiracial. And how do I give her context for that Koreanness? And I started feeling like an imposter. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go do some research like anybody else who doesn't necessarily understand a history. And so that was really the first time it caught me.
Yeah. It's interesting how comfortable you feel with what you know when it's just for you, when it's just inside. And then when you realize, oh, wait, I need to relay this. And I may not know as much as I think I know. Like I'm very comfortable in what I know, but I might need to know more if I'm going to share this. Yeah. And I think, in a way, that's also sort of like a business structure. If you're working with people who are new to this and this is your area of focus and this is your general task, like you do them. But when you realize you pass them on to someone, you're like, wait a minute, I might need to go refresh because what I've been doing has been working for me and I'm happy, but this might leave some holes for someone I'm trying to share this with.
Yeah, that muscle memory doesn't necessarily translate to the outside world.
Yeah. Yeah. So your daughter comes and so what are you thinking then, with all of this swirling around in your mind?
I think what happened was I got so wrapped up. Just to give context, she was born March 14th, 2020. So very quickly, the task became helping her survive and like everyone else grappling with psychological and physical obstacles that none of us had ever experienced before. So there was the very immediate role that I had to play with my lizard brain of keeping this sweet, sweet new baby healthy and
Hmm.
here. And so I don't think, it wasn't bad. It just made me go like, "Oh, right. I have to love her. I have to love her and tell her she's protected and that I accept her." And, all suddenly all those other parental considerations come into play. And I'll just say, flashing forward a bit now, there have been times where, you know, we'll see something on TV and I'll be like, "Do you know that person's Korean too? And we're Korean. How cool is that?" So there's like a very simple, direct reality that she's dealing with. She hasn't conceived of that. She hasn't conceived of other countries. That is really, I don't want to, start getting on the soapbox, but that is the beautiful thing about kids. They are shaping their reality in real time. So they're not looking at you versus me and going, those are different people, though they are different cultures.
Hmm.
Just like, this is a world full of people. Interesting. And so that creates a circumstance that makes it very liberating to go, I can be in a elementary school stage of understanding myself alongside my daughter.
Yeah, I think that's great about kids. Kids sort of they kind of observe the thing that they like first, and so they don't. It's not their default to find something wrong. They're going like, your hair's funny, or like, because they like it. It's drawing them. And so yeah, it is. That innocence is so beautiful. And there's all those sayings about like, like hate is taught. It's
Yeah.
not. You're not born to hate. You've been taught to do that. And yeah, I can only imagine. Like for one, whether you felt like the baby's coming. Are you ready? And then the world is saying, by the way, everyone needs to shelter at home and keep a considerable distance from everybody until we figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like bringing your child into a dystopian world.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it really is surreal looking back on those days. But then what's beautiful is it reminded me that we can find each other, we can find who we are over time. There's not a rush for that. It can unfold the way it's supposed to.
And okay, so now that you've had this in your head, when does the team come together and start to craft this story, or start to pull this knowledge out of you to craft the story?
So, funny enough, when I was engaged in K-pop
Hmm.
on Broadway, we had a lot of tech time, and I was so happy to be in community with so many Korean people, so many API people of other descent, some multicultural API folks. It really felt just like a homecoming in a way. It was an
Mm.
exceptional time, but being bilingual was invited into the ecosystem of commercial theater. It was pretty radical. It was pretty beautiful. And at the same time, I was trying to find my overlap. And there were some ways in which I felt a deep sense of community, in some ways where I was like, oh, this is so beautiful for these folks who have emigrated to America or people who have grown up in Korea, but that wasn't my experience. And I actually got friendly with one of the concessions folks who is also a Korean adoptee. And so we had a little moment of community together because it is niche within. And I would talk to some people about it. And that was really interesting. And they were like, oh, interesting, because there is a complicated history for both the Korean and international side of the adoption system. And so I just wanted to understand my Koreanness. So during that tech process, I started writing down memories. I'd recently seen that movie Minari by Isaac Lee with Stephen Yeun, and he was talking about his process of just writing down memory from childhood. I've always been a writer. I've always been a journaler. My mom was an English teacher. I love writing. And so I just started writing down tons of memories. And then I tasked myself for every day of tech, just write down 2 to 3 sentences.
Mm.
And during tech, Matt was still living in Hudson and he was working on things. And we started getting it in our head about we should make something together. And, he started getting interested in movies. And I was like, well, let's write a movie. Let's do something. And I started telling him about this idea, just excavating my past. So we started banding about ideas, and he would, you know, take some memories and some, short essays I wrote and try to convert them into scenes just for fun. We were like, let's be nerds together and start doing this. And then in January, I had this stuff and K-pop had closed and I was feeling unrest. And what am I going to do with this material? And Nell Bon-Jensen, who was the artistic director of Theater Horizon at the time, reached out to me and pitched this idea of them sponsoring me for the Pew Grant as lead artist. And she was like, do you have anything you want to write about? And I sure did. So it was really easy for me, of course, to have Matt in the fold there because we started and I just want to say Brenson in his professional capacity.
Sure.
Brenson Thomas, he's a good friend. We've always dreamed, we've been wanting to create something together. He's so funny. He's so smart.
Yes,
He's so thoughtful. He's a brilliant actor. He encompasses so many different facets of the theater form. And when it happened, we went to go hang out when he used to live in Philly. And I was like, this is happening. Can you please? It's our time. So that came together and was so joyful. And, originally we weren't sure if this was going to be a musical, but the minute it was, I wanted to have Josh write the music. I have been so lucky to work with so many new composers. There are a lot of great people out there. I love Josh's music so much because he's a fan of musical theater, but he comes from a band background. He was a band kid. And so for me, I wanted the music to feel like almost a mixtape. Now, to be clear, it does sound like musical theater. And there are times where, we're living in the form. And I love the form and I've lived in it so long. But I was a mixtape kid growing up in the 90s. I mean, literally like hit the double buttons, use the pencil to rewind things. My taste is very eclectic. I love musical theater, but I am the product of the music my parents listened to. I have 3 brothers who are not necessarily traumatized, but their musical influences. So Josh was uniquely suited to write this score, on top of which he has dramaturgical insight about my tastes and the things I care about in my life that are built in from us being in a relationship. So I really felt like I had assembled the Avengers, like the artistic Avengers. I was really excited.
Wow.
And am excited about these people.
Great. And yeah, this is a wonderful team. It is the Avengers. Working together with your husband. Were there moments of this story where you had to take a pause and kind of be there for each other because this is your life, based on your life, but like you're opening doors as you're trying to tell this story as well. Can you talk about any of those moments where you really had to sort of hold each other and and decide whether this is going to go in this story or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shortly after I started applying for this grant, my father died in March of 2023. And that, like many people, changed my molecules. I had a really good relationship with my dad. He drove me to all my piano lessons. We really bonded in a very particular way in our family structure. My mom is a phenomenally creative and at times eccentric energy who I also adore, that I'm clearly the product of. But a couple months had passed and I just realized I can't write this story without dealing with that grief. It is a thing of art imitating life, as cheesy as that may sound, but there are some things that are undeniable. And we had already been talking about the excavation of memory and how memories change the longer you sit with it, the inaccuracy of memory, the more you repeat it and think about it. And here I was losing my father, who had in many ways been the keeper of memories for me because he was a science man. So he was very ordered and very accurate. My mom is a story weaver. She's accurate too in her own way, but I felt like I was really losing an important piece of myself. So there was that moment. And then also a Frontline came out with an expose last year about the Korean adoption system and the fraudulence that existed within the adoption system. There's a broad spectrum of adoptee experience. And I watched this expose and I felt a responsibility in that moment to those findings and I started writing it in a very aggressive way. And it was very emotional for me to watch that. Adopt the orphanage from which I was adopted, Eastern Welfare Society, is one of the orphanages featured in it. It started making me question things that I had already had some answers to. It was emotional and dizzying. And I started writing this in. And what I discovered, and through the guidance of my collaborators, I just realized that was a deviation that wasn't in line with the arc that I was actually ultimately trying to achieve. But, Josh really helped me through that and was like, do you want this to be part of this? Should we going in a different direction? Is this something that feels important to you to cover? And he really helped give me the space to put that in the show and accept me when I had the realization that this is not the story that I necessarily want to tell in this moment. It's a story that can be told and will be told, maybe by me. Definitely, there are other adoptee Korean playwrights and makers who are starting to talk about this. But I really wanted to make sure that I was dealing with my theme of what is the cost of self-suppression growing up in a transracial family? What is the cost of surviving in culture by way of the fluency that's built in when you grow up in a family that is a different identity from yourself? If that makes sense. Maybe that doesn't make sense. I don't know. But that's, we all code switch. We all have various means of code switching, but that's something I became interested in. So that story will be told about the Korean adoption system, but I really wanted this to be about the family and home and lost histories.
And so how are you feeling about it now? As we're talking, tomorrow starts previews.
Yes, tomorrow is pay what you want for our final dress into previews. I feel like my life has been everything everywhere all at once this year, and I haven't had time to breathe and think. But I will say I have waves of pride and then waves of nervousness. For real. I think I've been having a situation where people keep coming up to me and being like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, I think I'm okay, but am I in another loop of suppression? What's happening? But I do feel okay. I feel excited because I believe in this story and I want people to witness an American adoption story from the perspective of the adoptee.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been working really hard to edit and refine and make it clear and, follow the rules of the craft and break rules of the craft when it feels right. But ultimately, I feel really excited that people are going to witness this specific story. And I'm curious for the ways in which they relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I was going to ask you what you hope an audience takes away from it, but you just answered it.
Yeah,
And so is there anything else you'd like to say about the piece before we part?
just that I'm grateful for people to come and experience it with us. And I've been so moved by the adoptees that have come out of the woodwork and disclosed elements of their lives and or people who are in community with us by way of having kids or saying, oh, my neighbor has an adopted child, or I'm actually adopted. I didn't know that our stories could be told. And so I just want to invite people to come and live with us and dive into a story that you don't necessarily see very often, but I think will resonate for a lot of people.
Great. And that's a good place to leave it. It's a world premiere musical. Philadelphia loves musicals. So you got to get out to Theater Horizon to see Wishing to Grow Up Brightly, a search for connection in the fragments left behind. This wonderful team of friends and family came together to craft this book. Amanda Morton, Matthew Decker, Brenson, Thomas, with the music by Josh Totora. This piece is on stage through November 23rd. If you're listening to this now, go get tickets. And that's tickets at plural because theater is more fun with a +1. Amanda Morton, thank you so much. I have known you for so long, and I'm so glad to have had this chat with you. And I can't wait to see the show. I already have my tickets, and I hope the listeners already have theirs. Come say hi if you see me in the theater.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. It's been truly a pleasure.